Tonight, drug turf war. Shootings in Fort St. John linked to recent Peace Region gang activity. Possible measles exposure. It happened in Dawson Creek. And Haunted Village. Kids are getting set for Halloween. Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with RCMP confirming that the string of recent shootings in Fort St. John are in fact connected to the gang-related conflict across the Peace Region. In the early morning hours of Wednesday, shots were fired near the 9500 block of 96th Avenue, wounding one person. Hours later, Mounties conducting a takedown and arresting Evan Love. Now, police say the 22-year-old was wearing body armor and in the possession of a loaded firearm at the time of his arrest. After executing a warrant on Love's home Wednesday evening, police say they discovered a shotgun, 3D printed handgun, and alleged drug trafficking paraphernalia. Now, Love is facing a number of charges, including assault, unauthorized possession of a prohibited firearm, and altering a firearm serial number. Regarding the string of incidents in the preceding weeks, police do confirm the recent shootings are connected. They say it's part of the ongoing gang-related conflict that's involving individuals and groups known within Fort St. John, across the Peace Region, and interprovincially. Mounties add the violence appears to be driven by disputes related to the sale of illicit drugs, as well as efforts by groups to assert control over the region. Now, while the incidents are targeted, police do say gunfire puts the public at risk. Love will remain in police custody until his next scheduled court appearance. That's expected to happen on November the 3rd. The BC Centre for Disease Control reporting 2 new potential measles exposure locations in Dawson Creek. The BC CDC saying you may have been exposed to the virus if you were at the Dawson Creek and District Emergency Department on 2 different dates. The first possible exposure happened back on October the 21st between approximately 9 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. The second, 3 days later on October 24th, from just before 11 a.m. to 2:20 p.m. Health officials say those who may have been exposed should use the measles exposure risk assessment tool to determine what to do next. The tool is available on the BC CDC's website. The centre also confirming 12 new measles cases across northeast BC in their latest update, increasing the total here to 225 for the year. Well, the city of Dawson Creek says traffic is expected to resume on parts of 8th Street tomorrow. The roundabout's exit leading to 8th Street has been closed since Wednesday, and a small detour has been put in place along Park Hill Drive to access the northern part of the city. City officials say a group of local businesses had requested the reconstruction of 100B Avenue from 8th Street to Wilson Road, but complications from a sewer pipelining delayed the project. The city expects the work to be completed by this Friday. Now, the people who answer 911 calls in BC say they're expecting high call volumes on Halloween. Ecom says it saw a 17% spike in 911 calls last Halloween compared to a typical weeknight evening. And with October 31st falling on a Friday this year, even higher call volumes are anticipated. They say extra staff are being brought on to help manage the anticipated spikes in calls. People are being reminded to keep 911 lines free for real emergencies by using non-emergency numbers or online reporting for less urgent issues that don't require the police, fire, or ambulance immediately. It's been a dramatic development in the legislature in Victoria. Premier David Eby is now threatening to call a snap election. It all hinges on the passage of a bill to fast-track construction of the North Coast transmission line to power future resource projects. So, what is the likelihood of an early election? Here's CTV's Rob Buffett.
We'll have to be ready.
It was a shot across the bow by the Premier, threatening an early election.
This is non-negotiable for us. I would stake our government on it. Those 10,000 jobs, the prosperity for British Columbians. The last thing I want is an election, but we'll be prepared if it's necessary.
Just over a year after securing a razor-thin 1-seat majority, Eby was adamant British Columbians will go to the polls if his party's Bill 31, legislation that would fast-track construction of the North Coast transmission line, doesn't pass.
Our government is committed to the 10,000 jobs that this bill represents. We're going to deliver those for British Columbians, and I would stake our government on that.
If the Premier wants to go to this brinkmanship, I can tell you, as the Conservatives, we will be voting against Bill 31. So if he wants to go to the polls, drop the writ, let's go dance.
EB's NDP have 47 out of 93 seats in the House, a one-seat cushion to pass the bill if they rely on the House Speaker to break a tie.
We have a very narrow margin in the legislature.
Wednesday, the bill passed second reading, but still has committee stage in third reading. And the Greens say they don't know if they'll support it. Opposition MLAs say they think this could be an excuse to call an early election.
Election calls are opportunistic. We believe in a fixed election schedule, so we shouldn't even be talking about this.
Let's dance. I'm more than happy to dance.
It's unlikely, but all of a sudden, British Columbians may be doing the cha-cha to the polls much earlier than expected.
And British Columbians are feeling the financial squeeze even as interest rates come down and inflation continues to ease. A new report finds more families are tapping into savings and delaying major financial goals just to keep up with rising costs. The Great Delay 2025 report was released by the estate planning company Willful. It shows nearly half of all British Columbians have had to dip into their savings, while 2/3 say they've postponed a financial milestone this year.
People are having to sacrifice future planning to prioritize today. And that causes a lot of financial pessimism. It causes this anxiety that we aren't checking these things off our list, whether that's emergency planning, like an emergency fund or estate plans, or whether that is saving up for big goals like starting a business, buying a home, getting married, etc.
The report goes on to say that the takeaway is that small, consistent steps can still make a difference, from carving out even $50 or $100 a month for savings to finally checking off one financial to-do on your list. November is Financial Literacy Month, and experts say it's a good time for British Columbians to revisit their plans and start rebuilding confidence in their financial future. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has released a new report of its own, and it warns the provincial government's debt is growing at an alarming rate, and BC taxpayers are the ones footing the bill.
This government desperately needs to rein in their out-of-control spending and stop racking up that kind of debt for British Columbians. Because just like with your family credit card, big debt today means big interest payments down the line.
The findings show that total provincial debt has exploded by 136% just over the past year, and that every British Columbian now owes the equivalent of $27,000 towards that debt. The Federation adds that interest payments alone will cost more than $5 billion a year. By 2027, those payments are projected to hit $7.6 billion. Now, if just paying the interest without paying down the actual debt servicing would be a bigger provincial ministry than child services. Thousands of students in Alberta walking out of class today. They were showing support for teachers who were ordered back to work this week by the provincial government.
Now that teachers cannot stand for themselves anymore because of Bill 2, we are walking out for them. Teachers have stood up for us countless times at the rallies, the protests, or even just voting to strike, because we understand that it's not just only about them, it's about our learning too. This change isn't something that only teachers wanted to see. It's for all the people who experienced this firsthand.
The walkouts are being organized by students by social media. Participants say they want to show solidarity with teachers, expressing concern over classroom conditions and how the government has handled the dispute. Students also say they're worried about making up for nearly a month of missed class time. Well, today, the Canadian Armed Forces presented survivors with a long-awaited apology. It was regarding institutionalized discrimination that members have faced in the past.
I apologize to every CAF member, veteran who experienced racism, discrimination, and harassment. And I acknowledge we failed you.
It's an acknowledgement the Chief of Staff, Defense Staff says marks both a milestone and a difficult day for the military. Feelings on the apology are mixed among veterans today, with some calling the remarks performative and hollow. The military, which recent reports show is becoming more diverse. Officials say the military is committed to real and lasting culture change, and that this time is just one step along this path. Prime Minister Mark Carney is getting his first look at the contender from South Korea to replace Canada's aging submarine fleet. On the margins of the APEC summit, Carney paid a visit today to the Hanwha shipyard. CTV's Judy Trin was there.
This is Hanwha's KSS-3 submarine, launched into the sea just in time for the Prime Minister's visit. Mark Carney climbed down 7 meters to check out what the South Koreans want Canada to buy.
I told him we can build a submarine in 6 years.
The Royal Canadian Navy needs to begin replacing its aging fleet by 2035. Of its 4 submarines, only 1 is operational, the others in maintenance.
It's the only technology in the Navy that guarantees that we control our waters. We get to say who comes into our waters, and if they don't have our permission, then we can keep them out.
Hanwha uses robot technology to build its submarines, which will cost about $2 billion each. It's competing with a German-Norwegian venture. Carney toured TKMS over the summer. Its state-of-the-art vessel is still in production. During a visit to Ottawa last week, the CEO didn't provide a cost estimate.
And of course, we will calculate on a base what the customer wants to have, which capabilities should the submarine have. So for us, I think it's too early to shout out a price range.
The Navy wants to buy 12 new submarines. The successful bid must also benefit Canada.
Factors like industrial benefits for the country, the use of Canadian inputs, materials like steel, the timeliness of the delivery of a submarine, for example, will be important for us.
The federal government says it will choose the winning submarine contractor in 2026, but it could happen earlier. Judy Trin, CTV News, Koje, South Korea.
South of the border now, the U.S. Senate has voted to nullify Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada. It's the second time senators have voted to knock down the tariffs. While it was a rare bipartisan slap, it was more of a symbolic scolding of the president's trade war with Canada. 4 Republicans sided with the Democrats to block the tariffs. Kentucky's Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul both upset over rising costs on key industries in their state, like bourbon and manufacturing. While Susan Collins of Maine, a state that relies on Canada for imported oil and gas, and Alaska's Lisa Murkowski all voted to repeal U.S. duties on Canadian goods. Now, the House of Representatives will not take up the Senate's resolution. That's because the Republicans made a new rule that bars any measure challenging Trump's tariffs. Even when the Supreme Court hears oral arguments on November the 5th on the legality of Trump's tariffs, the final ruling will likely take months, if not years. And President Trump has called on American military leaders to resume testing nuclear weapons, Trump saying it would be done on an equal basis with both Russia and China.
You know, we have more than anybody, but I see them testing. I say, well, if they're going to test, I guess we have to test.
Trump suggested the change is necessary to keep up with other countries. Russia announced over the weekend it had successfully tested 2 new weapons that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. The last time the U.S. tested a nuclear weapon was all the way back in 1992. People across the North Caribbean are assessing the destruction caused by Hurricane Melissa as the death toll from the storm is mounting. In Haiti, at least 25 were reported killed and another 18 missing. Then over to Jamaica, where government workers and residents began clearing roads in a push to reach isolated communities hit hard by the storm. One historic community known as Black River was completely wiped out. Melissa is now forecast to pass near Bermuda late tonight and may strengthen further before weakening on Friday. King Charles has begun the formal process of stripping his brother Andrew of his royal titles, including Prince. Buckingham Palace revealing Andrew will now only be referred to as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He will also be forced to give up the lease of his residence, Royal Lodge, and move to private housing. It's just the latest fallout from its sexual abuse allegations made against Andrew and his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew gave up other titles, including the Duke of York, earlier this month. Well, with Halloween just a day away, the Dawson Creek District Chamber of Commerce hosting the 2025 Haunted Village for trick-or-treaters of all ages. The event taking place at the Walter Wright Pioneer Village on Friday. The Chamber says the village will be transformed to feature silly scares, magical surprises, and friendly frights. Organizers are thrilled to offer a safe place for kids to trick-or-treat. The event made possible with the help of many community donations. Families can join the fun and collect treats between 4 and 8:30 p.m. tomorrow. All right, please do stay tuned. Noah will be right back with a look at weather to see what Halloween evening will look like. All that coming up after the break.